All right, well, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for coming on. Thanks again to Michael. Thank you, Mike Moseby. Thanks for being a positive resource for buyers and sellers, for educating the community, and I'm sure we're going to get great value here on this great program. Uh, so thanks for joining us again, Michael, and for your punctuality, for keeping your commitment to scheduling this time, and even reminding me that it was time.
Cool. Good to see you again, Luis. Looking forward to helping.
Okay, so we're talking today about the NAF Cash program. Uh, so a lot of times, sellers, people who are thinking about selling their home and buying another home, a lot of the things that I hear from people is, hey, I don't want to sell my home because where am I going to move to? Where am I move to? Okay, so yeah, there is the option. I mean, most people kind of have the understanding, or a lot of us have the understanding of, yeah, you can sell your home, accept an offer contingent upon you finding a replacement property, then submit offers like that to get the replacement property, and then close bill of escrow simultaneously. Or you could sell your property, have a lease back situation where you're renting your property back from the buyer until you find your next property. But this takes away that uncomfortableness of people not knowing where they're going to move to before they put them for sale, the uncomfortableness of having people come into your house and invade your personal space while you're living there. So this is a great opportunity, great program. And so tell us a little about the NAF Cash program, Mike. Can you
Yeah,
provide a brief overview program?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, the two words that you brought up that definitely ring true of how NAF Cash helps buyers out, and especially a buyer who's looking to sell, that word uncomfortableness, because it's very uncomfortable for a person who's looking to sell a property to go out on the market and buy another property. That's a very uncomfortable process because it's complicated. The regular home seller and home buyer, they don't do this on a day-to-day basis. And each transaction, selling a home and buying a home, are very stressful, uncomfortable situations. So to do them at the same time is super uncomfortable. So NAF Cash, we'll explain how the NAF Cash program kind of alleviates some of that uncomfortableness. The other word that you used was contingent. And I really want to break down what a contingency is and why in some aspects, whether you're the buyer or the seller, the contingency is a bad thing. Imagine if you're selling a property and you have three buyers. The first two buyers keep all of their contingencies. They want to make sure they take 3 weeks to get their loan approved. They want to make sure they have 2 weeks to get their appraisal approved. And both of the first two buyers have a property to sell that they haven't sold yet. So you, as the seller, looking at the first two buyers that have a property to sell, you're not very confident that those buyers are going to buy your property because you don't know if their property is going to sell or not. They have a
All right,
contingent
hold on.
property.
So I
Sure.
have three. Let's say I'm the seller. I have three offers.
Hmm.
Two offers. The buyer needs to sell their home first
Yeah.
before they buy my home.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
third offer, they're just going to be able to close escrow and not have that contingency of needing to
Right.
sell their home.
Right.
Right? Okay.
Right. So
Okay.
that third buyer is so much more attractive. That third buyer is so much more attractive. Now, what NAF Cash does for that buyer, and here's just cutting to the point of NAF Cash and why it's such a good program, is for that buyer, that third buyer, maybe they do have a property to sell. NAF Cash comes in. You come to New American Funding, you come to me, we get you pre-underwritten, which means we sign off on all of your income and your asset and your credit conditions. We have an underwriter look at the whole file, and we look at the net sheet of what you're going to sell your property for. Most times your property needs to be going on the market soon. So we know how much you're going to make, and we buy the property in a nutshell, all cash for you. So if you're qualified for 600,000, we buy the property for 600,000. We take ownership of the property within about 10 days, and then we sell the property back to you at the same interest rate within just a few weeks, and then you take ownership of the property then. So from the seller's perspective, the seller of the property that you want to buy, we bought the property all cash. New American Funding bought the property all cash, and then we financed the property back to you, the buyer, once your property sells,
Okay.
whether
Okay.
it's 2 weeks later or 2 months later. That's kind of how the turn time works. And I know there's
Okay.
a
So
lot of
let's break that down. Let's break it down. So let's just say I'm approved for 600. If I'm selling my property maybe for 1 million or 1.5, and I'm looking to buy a property, right? you're saying that you're gonna give me, you're gonna be able to buy the property cash
Mhm.
even before I have sold my own house.
Correct, correct. And
Okay.
this just a little bit, something that will explain why this loan program is about. It is going to have to do with the history of the program. Why was NAF? How did NAF Cash start to be? There's always been brokers, very, very outside of the box loan people who have done a program similar to this. The fees have been substantially high, so a regular buyer is not very interested in the program. What we
Okay.
did was we saw that a lot of, in the instance where you're the seller and you have three buyers interested, what we saw about 5 years ago was that veterans, people using VA financing with 0% down, were very low on the priority list for getting their offer accepted. Because from a seller's perspective, if you have three buyers, someone is coming in with 10% down, someone is coming in with 20% down, and then you have a veteran coming in with 0% down, that veteran was not getting a fair handshake. So about 5 years ago, we did some research and found some all cash programs, but the fees were substantially high. Some of these brokers were charging 5% to 10% of the purchase price as a fee just to give the money for all cash
Hmm.
for just a couple of weeks, because we buy the
Okay.
property all cash and then we finance it back to you. Our fee in California is 1.6%. That's the fee that we charge you, and we finance it into the loan amount. You don't have to come in with 1.6%. So, on a $600,000 loan where you're coming in with whatever 10% down, that's about $7,000. $7,000 is added to your loan amount and financed over 30 years, which is about,
Okay.
$15 a month or 10
Okay.
bucks a month.
Okay. So let's back up right now. Let's just back
Sure,
up
sure,
real
sure.
quick. So there's three offers. Um, Two offers have a contingency to sell their house before they could buy your house.
Mhm.
The third offer, let's just say I'm the buyer of the third offer, NAF Cash is going to give me the cash. So my offer is like a cash offer to the seller.
Mhm.
So the seller
Mhm.
has two offers with a contingency and
Mhm.
one cash offer that can close in how long?
10 days. 10 days is
10 days.
usually
10 days. Okay.
and the reason why it's not just one day, because you're thinking, if I just give you cash, why don't we just close in one day? The inspection contingency is very important because we have the cash. We're, one of the top direct lenders in the country. Of course, we have $500,000 to give you or $600,000 to give you to buy this property all cash. We don't want the property, even though we, as the loan company, as the person giving $600,000 to the seller to buy this property on your behalf, we want to keep it as short as possible. We want to make sure you want the property, so that once we take ownership of the property, we go through inspections, and the buyer is very involved in the inspection process to make sure that they want the property. And if you say no, I don't like that the roof is old, I don't like that there's a crack in the foundation, I don't like the lighting, I don't like the electrical is old, then we just cancel the transaction and we don't buy it all cash. We move on to the next program. But those inspection contingency, the buyer is very involved to know that once we take ownership of this property all cash, we finance it back to the buyer.
Okay. So like you were talking about a VA buyer can buy with
Mhm.
zero down, a low down payment buyer. You're turning in the person who doesn't have the means, who doesn't have the resources to buy a property with a very large down payment or take away the contingencies. You're turning them into a cash buyer,
Yeah.
so they're closing escrow with cash on the
Mhm.
next property, which
Mhm.
is a huge deal. Which is
It
a huge,
is.
yeah.
It is.
And
Yeah.
you're saying that it only costs the buyer or the seller buyer 1.6%, right?
Correct. There's two buckets of fees that are not equal all the time. The 1.6% is the upfront fee that's financed into the loan amount. Again, it's not at a closing cost. You don't have to come in with, in that $600,000 purchase, you don't have to come in with 7,000 or $7,500. It's financed into your loan amount. So if you're
Mm,
buying a property for 600,000, you're coming in with 10% down, that's 60,000. Your loan amount is 540,000. Then your loan amount is just increased to 547. So you don't
okay.
come in with that fee. It's financed into your loan amount, which increases your monthly payment by a few dollars a month. over 30 years. The other
Okay.
bucket of fees is once we have the property, once we buy the property all cash, guess who's responsible for paying for the closing costs? Guess who's responsible for paying for the property taxes? Guess who's responsible for, and we don't want to incur those fees because we're not the buyer of the property. We're just helping you out as a buyer who doesn't have a large down payment or has a property to sell. We figure out a per diem of what is our cost for owning this property. It usually shakes out to about $100 a day or $150 a day. So while we have the property all cash and you're selling your current home, you actually have to cover the property taxes on this property that we bought on your behalf, which shakes out to about $100 or $150 a day at the price range that we're talking about, 600, 700,000, that entry level kind of price range that we talked about previously. So over, a few days, if you can sell your property quickly, then that per diem is not a very large day. 150 times 7 is not that much money. But if it takes you 3 months to sell your property, that's a lot of cost incurred. So in this market, we are seeing properties still kind of, fly off the market as if they're priced well. So what we're seeing is about 15 to 30 days of that per diem as a cost to the buyer. Because again, we're buying the property on your behalf. We shouldn't be incurring any fees to own that property because it's not our property. It's yours. We're just buying it all cash on your behalf.
I see. I see. Okay. And then so in order for me to become a cash buyer, let's just
Mhm.
say I have a small down payment. How
Mhm.
do pre-qualify me to become eligible for this program? What are the
Right.
requirements for me if
It's
I'm a buyer?
it's almost exactly the same as a traditional pre-qualification. We have to run credit. There's a minimum credit score. We have to look at your income to make sure that you make enough money. There are a little more, and I say little, and I really mean little. There's a little more conservative underwriting approval for NAF Cash because again, we really need to make sure that you're qualified for this loan because we're giving out a $600,000 check in our
Okay.
company's
Okay.
name to make sure that the loan is approved. So usually a 700 credit score or higher is required. We do not accept, well, FHA does not do a property like this, a transaction like this, because FHA requires that if one person is going to buy a property, they can't sell it for 90 days. It's called the anti-flip rule. FHA does not allow flip properties. So if you only qualify for FHA, like if you have a 610 credit score or a 620 credit score, NAF Cash is unfortunately not going to work for you because we're looking to flip the property back to you after a couple of weeks. We don't want to wait 90 days, which FHA requires. So it's for VA buyers. It's for conventional Fannie and Freddie buyers. Up to about $1 million loan amount is the biggest loan amount that we give. But if you have a large down payment from the sale of your home, we'll do a sales price up to $2 million. So
Okay.
there's a lot of buyers in the LA area who can qualify for this type of product.
Okay. Okay. And then so I have to have a high credit score. My income needs to qualify for the new mortgage. But in terms of the actual down payment that I could have if I was going to be a traditional buyer, how much do I have to have down, to be able to
Yeah,
do this?
5 to 10%. It's
10%.
usually the first time home buyer program does allow a 3% down for first time home buyers, but for this NAF cash program, it's in between 5 to 10%.
Okay. Okay. So then in this scenario, um, the process would be you get pre-qualified with your income, with
Mhm, mhm,
your credit,
mhm, mhm,
the equity you have in your home.
mhm.
I would go and I'm just walking through the process. I would
Sure.
make offers cash. Let's just say of the three offers, mine's cash, theirs is with a community. My offer is accepted. So then at that point, you said there's about a 10-day inspection contingent period, which is typical for me to inspect the
Typical. Yeah.
property and see,
Mhm,
what's going on, that you can't visibly see, negotiate some credits potentially or repairs, and then
mhm.
cash. You close escrow on the property. Now what happens?
Yeah, no, I mean, the two steps that I do want to kind of add to what you just summarized. You summarized beautifully exactly the first few steps. The realtor that you're working with does need to take a 45-minute live training because the real estate agent actually executes two purchase contracts when you're ready to buy the home.
Mhm.
They execute the purchase contract for us to buy the property all cash, and then once we take ownership of the property. They execute the second purchase contract for us to be the seller to you, the buyer. So the realtor needs about a 45-minute training, and I think you went through that training
Yes.
already. And
Yeah.
it's pretty straightforward. And the realtor actually gets paid after the first transaction. So,
Oh,
it benefits the realtors really like that, to get paid before the buyer gets the keys is usually does not happen. So that's
okay.
one clarification. The realtor does need to go through a training class. The other thing is, and I would want your take on this, because this is what we're seeing on the lending side, is that a cash offer potentially can, if a property is listed for $700,000, and if we were coming in all cash, we could potentially go in at 690 or 695 if we were all cash. So you get a little bit of a discount, typically, not in all markets, but what are you seeing as far as all cash
Well,
offers being
well,
more competitive and getting a slight deal on the property?
no, no, definitely it can. A lot of it depends on the level of motivation of the seller, where the seller is at. How much is the mortgage payment of the seller? Do they want to continue to have the mortgage payment, or have the doubts about, is it going to close and I'm going to still keep paying the mortgage? Is the property vacant, or am I living there?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, cash offers typically get accepted for less than what finance offers are, just because of the how you say, the doubt, the doubt of the appraisal, the
Mm-hmm.
doubt of the buyer qualifying, or
Right,
something happening with
right.
the buyer not
Yeah,
backing out or something like that. So cash
yeah.
is definitely an opportunity to get a better price. Yeah.
Gotcha. So yeah, after the offer is accepted, that we're purchasing the property all cash, we go through an inspection period, and then we close, and the seller of the property is done. The seller of the property, has gotten what they wanted for the property. We've taken
Mhm.
ownership of the property. On that day, we execute the second purchase contract, where we, as the seller, sell the property to you, the buyer. At that point, we re-verify all your employment, and if you have a property to sell, we wait for that property to sell. We do an appraisal to make sure the property's worth what we're selling it to you for, and you take ownership of the property. The thing that usually takes the longest is the sale of a property. That if you have a property to sell, there's nothing really that you can do or we can do if buyers aren't putting offers in on that property. We have to just wait for that property to sell. And I did want to reiterate that when we start that second transaction where we sell the property back to you, that's when we lock the interest rate in, and there are no add-ons to give you a higher rate or to charge you more points for this program. It's exactly
Mhm.
the same as our competitive rates for a person not using the cash program. There's no difference in cost. It's just that 1.6% fee, and then any per diem expenses that we incur by owning the property for the few weeks that we own the property before we sell it to you.
Okay, so let's just say we do that. We do that. We do exactly. We buy the property. We own the property. Now the New American Funding is the actual owner of the property, right?
Mhm, mhm,
Okay,
mhm.
so at this point, and I'm the buyer. When do I get to move in? I mean, do I have to wait to sell my house, or can I move in ahead of time?
You actually can move in ahead of time because the property's vacant. That was a question that came up maybe 3 years ago when we first started, closing a lot of these deals. This loan program, like I said, the history of it is to help VA buyers about 5 years ago, but 3 years ago, during COVID, it helped a lot when properties were being upbid and upbid and upbid, and only all cash was being accepted. This program was very, very popular because you can be an all cash buyer. The only reason that this loan program wouldn't work is if the property is being upbid too much and NAF Cash department is not comfortable, putting in an offer for 700,000 on a property that is only going to appraise for 600,000. Well, we're not very confident that the buyer is going to want to buy that property. We don't want to buy a property all cash that you're not going to want. So if we see that the property is really not worth close to what we're selling it for, NAF Cash will not uh, will
Okay.
not will not purchase that property because it's not worth what we're buying it
Okay.
for, right?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Now let's just say I move in. I move into my new property, and
Mhm.
then I'm going to sell my other one. Let's just say by the time I get everything ready, it takes a couple days to get ready, market that old property that I have, it's vacant. Maybe it's going to be 2 months before I get the funds from that other property. So for those,
Mhm.
let's just say 1 to 4, 30, 30, 45, 60 days, you said that there's a rent that I need to pay for the new
Yeah,
property before I can, 'cause I don't have the
correct.
nothing yet. We're not
Correct.
financing yet. So then that rental amount, you said is about $100, $150 a day, depends on the price.
Mhm.
Is that
So it's
paid
60
out of my
days.
pocket or does that come later on?
It comes later on. You pay it with your closing funds when you sell your property. So it's not anything that has to come out of your property.
Okay.
It's considered a closing cost, meaning you don't have to come it into until we're at the closing table 60 days later when you sell your property and those
Okay.
funds are available. It's just 9,000 less. If it's $150 a day at 60 days, that's $9,000 less because technically you've had two properties in the meantime. You have the property
Yes.
you're trying to sell and you have this property that we just paid all cash for.
Okay.
So
So what I understood
there,
is if I'm the buyer, if I'm the seller buyer, I get to buy a property cash, get it accepted and get my offer, prioritized over the other buyers. So I get an advantage there over other buyers that don't have this program. I get to move into my next property and potentially stay there for 1, 2, or 3 months and make no upfront payments on it, right? No upfront,
correct.
meaning not out of my pocket, while I'm waiting for this other property to sell.
Mm-mm. Your first payment date doesn't start typically until 30 to 45 days after we close on the second transaction. Correct. Yeah. So
Okay.
you're living in this property that you're renting from us, technically. Technically, we are the owner of the property. You're living there. You're, doing whatever you want to do as far as, getting it clean or moving in your furniture or whatever. But yeah, you're renting it from us for approximately $150 a day. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll make sure everyone heard that. You get to move into your next property, make no upfront payments on it, not have the money coming out of your bank account each month, whatever the per diem period is, and then get to sell my property vacant, right?
Correct.
Okay, okay.
Correct.
So that's a great
Mhm.
opportunity. Now, the question that naturally people are going to have is, well, New American Funding owns this new house. How am I protected that they're going to sell it to me or refi it into me. How do I know?
Yeah, we don't want the property. We're not in the business of accumulating property. The like I said, the two reasons why we came up with this property is because we saw VA buyers were not getting a fair handshake in financing.
Mm,
So we offer the cash so that we can finance the VA buyers. Then we saw all cash offers beating out our buyers who had a property to sell. I have a buyer who has a property to sell without NAF cash. I have a very difficult time getting that offer accepted. That buyer is put on the bottom of the seller's priority list. All the other buyers or an all cash investor is just beating my buyer who's qualified and just has a property to sell. Honestly, I don't know when that property is going to sell, so I kind of see it from the seller's perspective. But our end goal is to finance more buyers. That's our end goal. That's how we make our money.
okay.
That's what business we're in.
So how am I understand that's the goal, but how is the buyer protected to know that, hey, I sell my house, I am going to get this house. I'm living in
The,
it. It's under someone else. I'm not the
right.
actual owner yet. So is there
No,
some kind of documentation that's already prearranged purchase agreement or?
well, it is the purchase agreement. It's that
Okay.
second purchase. Once we take ownership of the property in the first 10 days, we buy the property all cash. We are the owner of that property. On that very day, we execute a second purchase contract that you purchase the property from us. Now, we don't know exactly how long that's going to take if you have a property to sell because you don't know and I don't know and your real estate agent doesn't know how long that property is going to sell. But there is a contract that says New American Funding promises to sell this property to Jane
Okay.
Smith, at $600,000. All of that is set in stone, and the only thing that would delay that is the sale of the property. If there is a property to sell, if there's not a property to sell, then we can close in like probably 2 weeks.
Okay. And you said this already, but the question people still have is, yeah, but it sounds too good to be true.
Right,
What's
right,
the, 1.6%. Okay, that's a little
yep,
bit extra, but
mm-hmm,
what's the
mm-hmm,
rate? What's the rate? That's the
yeah.
question.
Yeah, it's the competitive rate, and I believe me, like this is the most common question, not just with NAF Cash, but that realtors ask me, that my family members ask me, that my friends ask me, what are rates, what are rates, what are rates? And if you work at a competitive company, whatever you see online is going to be in the ballpark of what a competitive lender can offer. So if you check rates yourself to, on whatever some Yahoo article, that's the ballpark that we're going to offer
Okay.
because we don't if we offered substantially higher rates for the same product that Wells or Chase or ABC Mortgage was, we wouldn't be in business. So
I
our
see.
rates are competitive, and there is no add-on for this cash program except for the 1.6% fee, and then the per diem that you have to pay while we're owning the property and you're, you know,
Okay.
going through selling your property. So
Okay.
that's
Okay. And the
that's the
per
only
diem,
fee.
it sounds like it's less than it would have cost to actually rent a property nowadays. But so you
Yeah. I mean, we came up with this formula. Obviously, if you're buying a $300,000 property, it's less than $150 a month. If you're buying a $2 million property, it's more than $150 a month, because we figured out this little chart of, you know,
$150
what
per
sales
day, per
per
day for
day.
the
I
month.
apologize. I apologize. Per day. Yeah, per day. Because we
Okay.
figured out, okay, for property taxes and for utilities and for all these like miscellaneous fees that a homeowner, because we are the
Okay.
homeowner during that time that you're selling your property or you're getting the finance leg done, we're incurring those fees. What are the average total costs per day for a $300,000 transaction versus a 600,000 versus a 1.5 million? And so,
Okay.
you know, as the sales price goes up, that 100 or $150 goes up by incrementally as well, which
Okay.
just tries to make it fair for everybody.
All right. Now that's helpful to know. And then are there any other requirements in terms of the types of properties or
Mhm.
locations or areas?
Right. I just ran into, that's a good question, and I didn't
I
see
mean,
this
but
on your
can I buy a
list. Yeah.
duplex or 3 units or 4 units with this or
Right. It's only for condos and single family residences, and
okay.
it has to be a primary residence as
Primary.
well. It can't be an investment property or a vacation home. One
Okay.
thing that I didn't know until last week, because I had a client who was interested in this, is a property that is on in auction. NAF Cash will not finance, because typically during an auction, they don't allow for inspection. So
Mhm.
I don't know, us New American Funding giving you the $600,000 doesn't know if you're okay with the property or not, because in an
Mhm.
auction setting, you're not allowed to go and do a typical 10-day inspection period. So again, we don't want to buy the property and just keep it. We want to buy it and then finance it to you as quick as possible.
Okay.
So that's one thing that they don't do. And
So
foreclosure,
I heard single family
single
residence in
family
condos,
condominiums. Yep.
owner occupied. That's what I heard.
Correct,
Now, are
sir.
there
Yep.
certain areas in the county or the state or it's restricted to or
No, that we're licensed in 49 states. So each state does have a slightly different 1.6% fee. 1.6 is a little below average. I think
Mhm.
Florida is 3%. Colorado is like 2.9%. So
Mhm.
California is 1.6% to borrow that all cash, the fee that's added to your loan amount in the state of California.
I see, I see. And then if I wanted to move, let's just say to Florida or to Texas,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
could still use this program to buy the next property, move over there, and then sell mine.
Correct. The job situation is only, you know, you would need to have a job situated already, and we would need an
Ah,
offer letter from that job stating you're going to make
okay,
50,000 a year or 30,000 a year or 100,000 a year. Here's your start date. We would need one pay stub before you took ownership of the property. So you would need to, you know, kind of start working there or be able to work remote. A lot of people work remote now. So if we get a letter from the employer stating our employee works 100% remote, then you don't, you know, we don't need to see that you actually moved to Florida, because you
okay.
work 100% remote. You could live anywhere.
All right, I see. And then do you see any, I mean, I can't think of what are some other potential
Yeah,
challenges or risks with this?
right. Good. That's really good. I mean, I've highlighted some of them, you know, kind of
Yes.
in passing during this call, but I definitely want to reiterate the value of the property is very, very important. The value of the property, I have experienced a few times, NAF Cash not wanting to front the cash because the offer price that the buyer wants to put on the property is just substantially higher. So what we're afraid of and what we don't want, and this addresses one of your concerns before, how do you know that New American Funding is going to sell this property to you? It's because what we don't want is us buying a property at 700,000 all cash, the appraisal coming back at 600,000, and the buyer saying, I don't want this property for 700,000 if it's only worth 600,000, and then we're stuck with this property. That's kind of how New American Funding loses money, is just by accumulating these properties, because then we have to go and sell it, and it's
Okay.
not worth what we bought it for. So the value of the property is very important. The inspection, period, that 10-day period when we're buying the property, that you and your real estate agent go through the property and make sure you want it is very important, because no is a very good answer. If during that inspection period, if you see anything with the property you don't like and the seller doesn't want to fix it, or the seller doesn't want to credit for it, we don't want you to have that property you're not happy with. We'll cancel and we'll move on to the next property to put a cash offer on that. We want you to be happy with the property. So those two things, and of the two buyers that we talked about, the one buyer that has a property to sell, that's kind of what this loan program is geared towards. If you have a property to sell and you are, like we said, contingent on buying your next property until you sell this property, you're at the bottom of the priority list to sellers out there, because the seller does not want to wait on your property to sell. That's what NAF Cash is geared towards. If you have a property to sell, we will front you the money to buy the property all cash and wait for your property to sell. You do need to qualify. We do need to know how much you're going to sell your property for and how much you're going to net to make sure you're going to get this money. You need to pay the 1.6%, and you need to pay the per diem while your property is selling, on the new property. But that's really what it's geared towards. People who, in all honesty, people who don't have a property to sell, kind of like a first-time home buyer that has 5% down or 10% down, we don't really have a problem getting those offers accepted in this market, because our interest rates are very competitive, our loan officers are very knowledgeable, and we can close quicker than most of the lenders out there. So the sellers really like our buyers who don't have a property to sell. We're able to do traditional financing with that and not have to incur the 1.6%. If you don't need NAF Cash, we don't want you to use NAF Cash, because fiduciarily, I don't want to charge you a 1.6% fee that you don't need. So, but really, when you have a property to sell, this is a super, super helpful tool to buy your next property before your current property sells.
Okay. And so, interesting. And so what would be some logical recommendations you have if I'm thinking about the program, not sure about it?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
what would you recommend to me to do?
Yeah. Usually with a home buyer, the first thing you want to do is really talk to a lender in any situation. But in this situation, the buyer that has a property to sell, their first conversation should be with the real estate agent that's going to sell their property, and ask them, how long do you think my property is going to take to sell in this market? And if it's more than it's going to fly off the market and we're not going to have a problem, which, a lot of times selling a property does take a little longer to put it on the market, to get ready, to take pictures, to wait for the right buyer to come in. If that's the conversation that you have with your realtor upfront, NAF Cash is the program for you. Then you call me and we talk about the NAF Cash program, try to get you qualified for it, discuss the fees, make sure you're comfortable, so that when you're out there looking for properties, you know what's going to happen with the NAF Cash program. But that initial conversation with the listing agent, the realtor who's going to sell your property, about, how long do you think this is going to take to sell the property? And I'm looking to buy a property kind of at the same time. I know about this NAF Cash program as a real estate professional, Mr. and Mrs. listing agent, what do you think about this NAF Cash program? And of course, they would want you to use it, because they want you to be able to be on the market as a buyer kind of before your property sells. That's why it's such a great tool.
Okay, so what I'm kind of hearing is the perspective person thinking about it should have a professional properly evaluate their property to know what they're going to net on the sale and how long it's going to take,
Yeah.
and then call you up for a consultation and get pre-approved to see if they qualify for the program and what it's going to entail. And for that, I mean, does that cost them any money to get pre-approved, or to, see if they qualify for the program, or how does that work?
Good question. Yeah, there are no upfront fees at all. Whether it's a soft pull where we just want to generally look at the credit, obviously we can't pre-underwrite the file just off of a soft pull. But if you have credit concerns and you only want a soft pull, there's no cost for that. If you want to get started looking for properties right away, a hard inquiry is required. There's no cost for that. And if we run the hard inquiry and we see that there are maybe high credit card bills, there's a credit improvement report that comes free, again, free with our credit reports, that says, hey, if you pay down these 3 credit cards, your score can go up by 20 points or 40 points or whatever, so that we can get up to that credit score that you need. All of that is free. And to be honest with you, there's no obligation. Like, if you have your own loan officer that you really, really like, but they don't have this NAF Cash program. You can come to me, get pre-approved for the NAF Cash, and if you don't like it, go back to the other loan officer. That's fine. There's no obligation to use this program even if you got fully qualified. So no cost is obviously 100% accurate, and it's important, but also there's no obligation. It's just, you want to have as many options as possible as a seller / buyer.
Okay, great. So thanks for your time, Mike. You're being a resource for the insights and being helpful. We'll put Mike's information in this video. So appreciate your time. Any other comments you want to make, Mike? About it?
No, man. Is that 3-bedroom, 3-bath in Palmdale? Is that an upcoming listing, or is that a current listing?
It's available. We've had some people go through. They haven't yet, got the offer they want yet. It's a 3-bedroom, 3-bath, almost 2,000 square feet in the Antelope Valley Country Club in Palmdale. Yeah. $400,000 was the original price. We dropped it a little bit. So
Are there HOA dues on the?
Yeah, there's a HOA dues, which covers the water, the insurance, and the outside maintenance, outside lighting. It's not that much, like $450.
What are the amenities that are around it? Like, is it? You said it's on a country club. Is it close to a golf course?
It's right next to you. Walk to the golf course right across the street. Like if I go to the other side of that tree right there is the golf course. And
trying to work on my game. Maybe I'll head up. I really appreciate your time, Luis. I really appreciate this sharing of information, and I really appreciate you as a partner.
Okay, yeah, no, likewise. And those of you that are out there, this is a starting podcast. We're not live yet. We're going to start to go live pretty soon. But I want to talk to local businesses and learn about local businesses and local leaders and resources and be a resource for everyone out there. So if you would like to be showcased here and would like to promote your business or what's going on, I'm interested. And feel free to reach out. Be glad to have you here. All right, Mike. Thanks a lot.
Good job, man. Great talking to you.
Bye.